Hi everyone, welcome to You Can Do Math. Today we are factoring trinomials. It is a little bit more difficult than what we've been studying before, but not too difficult for you. You got this. So let's get started. All right, so today in factoring our trinomials, we're specifically going to look at quadratics. Quadratics means if you take a look at our example, our leading term here, the exponent is a 2, right? So it's a quadratic. And we are going to factor quadratic. Right now it's written in standard form, and we would like our end result to be in a factored form. And so if you take a look at the problem, you'll notice that that leading coefficient of 4, it cannot be divided equally amongst the other terms. And so therefore, we must multiply the 4 times the negative 135. And I like to put that off on the side, and that is negative 140. So we have to think of what two numbers can multiply to get a negative 140, but they also must add or subtract to get a negative 23 for our middle term. A strategy that I use, it doesn't work all the time, but I find it works more times than it doesn't, is if you add the digits and divide that by that number, then it sometimes works. So for an example, the 1 and the 4 and the 0, 1 plus 4 plus 0 is 5. So I'm going to divide 140 by 5. And in this case, it does actually work. So it is 5 times 28. And then once you find those two that can get to your middle term of 23, make sure you look at the signs. Signs is so important. I need to have a negative 28 and a positive 5 in order to get a negative 23. So many times I see students say, find the two, and then they mess up the signs, and oh, that's what happens in math, right? We get it all right and the signs wrong. So please just be careful, slow down, take your time on these problems. And then once you have found the two that work, then I'd like you to go ahead and draw your box. And the first term goes in the first box, 4x squared. The last term goes in the last box, negative 35. And the two that we found that work, the 5 and the negative 28, go in the other two boxes, and please don't forget about your x on both of those terms. All right, so now we have to pull out our greatest common factor. And I know that I've gotten some of your guys' emails, and that's the most difficult part, and I agree with you. It is going to take a lot of practice. And so I'm going to try to share with you kind of what's going on in my brain as I look at it. Taking a look at this box, when I see a 4 and a 5, I instantly know that there's no number that is besides 1, right, that will work. And so I know they both have an x, so the x has to go there. And then from there, my brain was like, well, in order to get that middle box, I need a 4x here, because 4x times x gives me that 4x squared. Then my brain, it just kind of shifts over, and I look at it and say, well, 4 times something, right, is 28, and that is 7. So I know 7 has to go here, and since on that column both of them are negative, I can divide both of them by a negative 7. And then last is going to be a 5. Because I can divide both of those terms, 5 and the 35. And then visually, I like look and see, can they multiply back through to make sure that that box is set up correctly. So like just in my head, I'm like, oh, 4x times x is 4x squared, check. 4x times negative 7, negative 28, I'm in good shape. 5 times x is 5x, and then 7, negative 7 times 5 is a negative 35. And that's just kind of what I do over and over again, just to make sure that I have the box set up correctly. And then once you have that, you can write out your answers of 4x plus 5 and the x minus 7. Okay, so I want you to rate this problem. 10 being the most difficult problem you have ever seen in math, 1 being the easiest. Like, where are you at? Like, stop for a second and go, okay, where am I at with this problem? It's always good to do a self-check, especially when you're learning something new. Just a real quick assessment. Am I doing this? Yes or no? Do I need more practice? How much more practice? What questions do I have? And it's also a good idea too to like write out your questions, like pause the video, write out questions. Number one, where the heck did she get 7? You know what I mean? Like, and those types of things are really helpful because when you go back through, you can kind of read over your notes, and then you can email me. You already have a starting point of things to talk about when you email me or when you join my conference calls. Okay, ready? Number 2 is next. All right, so for number 2, I am going to take that 9 and multiply it by negative 15. And when I do that, I have 135, and it's a negative 135. And then from there, you can use that strategy, 5 plus 3 plus 1, and that's 9. And we already know 9 times 15. Aw, it moved. Okay, I'm just going to keep that in the video. I'm not even going to start over. It's totally fine. It happens, right? That's right there. Mistake. I moved it. It's all good. We're moving on. Okay, so we know 9 and 15 won't work because if we add them, we do not get 22. So then, really? So then the next thing that I'm going to do is just because it ends in a 5, I'm going to divide it by 5. And it actually works. It's 5 times 27. I need a positive 22 for my middle term. So therefore, I need a negative 5, and then if you multiply negative 5 times 27, you get negative 135. Okay, so I'm going to draw my box next. I swear, my boxes are never pretty. I try. Nah, no go. It's okay. 9x squared. First term goes in the first box, last term goes in the last box, and the 2 that we found, don't forget about your x's, negative 5x and a positive 27x. And now let's slow it down on pulling out our greatest common factor. All right, so right away, this is what happens. This is what my brain says. It looks at the 9, it looks at the 5, and then I'm like, I can't divide any of those by certain, other than 1, but I can divide them both by an x. So I'm going to place just an x, and therefore, once I do that, I know I need to have a 9x on the outside of this box here. And then 9 times something is 27, right? And that is 3. And then now I go down, well, 5 and 15, I know I can divide them by 5, and it must be a negative 5 since they're both of those terms are negative. Okay, now I always just make sure that everything can multiply back through okay. 9x times x is 9x squared. 9x times 3 is 27x. I'm in good shape. Negative 5 times x, negative 5x, and then negative 5 times 3 is a negative 15. And guys, we did it. So we have 9x, minus 5, excuse me, times the quantity of x plus 3. And there we go. All right, so I'm ready for example number 3. I hope you are too. If you're feeling really confident, definitely please try to pause it. And if you're not, maybe one more, maybe we'll just do one more and then the 4th one is on you. So let's do it. Either way, your choice. Number 3, yes, okay. So if I take a look at this problem, I can't divide 4 evenly amongst all terms, so I'm going to do 4 times the negative 18, which I get negative 72. My strategy, if I add the digits, 7 plus 2 is 9, and 9 times 8 is 72, but that will not get me 21. So no go. I'm going to put 9 times 8, but that's not going to work. Let's see, what's another? I know 12, right? 12 times 6 gets us 72, but the most that could get us is 18, not 21, so we need to keep going. So let's try 3. If you divide 72 by 3, you get 3 and 24, and that's what we're looking for. Uh, Try not to get super discouraged if it takes you a long time to find those two. I always just grab my calculator, right, and just start divide by 2, divide by 3, divide by 4, add the digits and divide. That's a little bit of a lengthy process. You might not get it right away, and that's okay. Just know that that process is supposed to take just a little bit. All right, so now that we found our two, double check signs. I need a negative 72, but I have a positive 21, so that means it's 24 minus 3. And I'm going to go ahead and draw my box now. And first term goes in the first box, last term in the last box. Negative 3x and a positive 24x. And greatest common factor is same thing as what we've been doing before. I look kind of this first column here, a 4 and a 3, not divisible by anything but 1, but I can divide them both by an x, and then that means this must be 4x, and from there I kind of figured out like a cool little puzzle. That must be 6, right? Because 6 times 4 is 24. And then I have 2 negatives, and looks like it's going to be a 3. And it looks great. I see 4x minus 3 and x plus 6. Okay, so no matter where you are at in your learning today, I'd love for you to pause and try this out, and I will see you back in a minute. Okay, how'd you guys do? Did you do good? Did you get stuck? No worries. If you did great, great. If you got stuck, that's okay too. Here we go. 9 times 4. All right, so 9 times 4 is 36. What times what is 36? Well, 6 and 6. Did any of you write that down? You did too. It was probably your first one. No? Yes? It's okay. How about 18 times 2? I like 18 times 2. And I need a negative 20, but I have a positive 4. So that means both of these have to be negative. Because a negative 18 times a negative 2 is a positive 36. And if I combine those two, right, I add them, a negative 18 plus a negative 2 gives me a negative 20. So then now you draw your box. 9x squared, first term in the first box, last term in the last box, the two that we found, negative 18x and a negative 2x. Greatest common factor, let's see, first column here, I can divide both of these terms by a 9 and an x, which means this must be an x, which means this box must be a negative 2. And if that's the case and I have a positive 4, then I need a negative over here, and it looks like it's a negative 2. Because 9x times negative 2 is a negative 18x, right? And a negative 2 times a negative 2 gives you a positive 4. All right, so I have 9x minus 2 times the quantity of x minus 2, and there you guys go. All right, thank you so much for joining me, and please email me if you have any questions, and please do not forget to like and subscribe. All right, guys, see you next time. Bye.